Hi everybody, this is Jeremy from Humble Organics, and in this video I'm going to show you how to build raised vegetable garden beds. This is a really easy project. It doesn't take much skill and won't take much time. The first thing I want to talk about is the dimensions of your bed. So there are two important dimensions that you need to consider. The first is the depth of your bed, and the second is the width of your bed. So as for the depth, one of the advantages of raised bed gardening is you can generate really rich garden soil. And so if you have that really rich garden soil, most vegetables are going to root in about the top 6 inches of that soil. So they're not going to go super deep. So I would recommend that for the depth of your beds, if you're laying them on flat ground, you could probably get away with 6 inches deep. A little bit deeper would be better, like 8 inches. The bed you see here, which is what I'm going to be building in a minute, is actually 10 inches deep. And the main reason I go that deep is because we have a really steep hillside and we have the beds terraced into the hillside. And so if I went less than 8 inches high, then the back of my beds would actually be completely buried under the ground, which is something I don't want. So I go with 10 inches deep. But basically, I would say anywhere from 6 to 10 to 12, or even higher if you don't want to bend over, but I wouldn't go much less than 6. Width is also really important, and the main consideration here is that you want to be able to make sure you can easily reach into the center of your bed, because you're going to be planting and harvesting. And so all of my beds are 4 feet wide. And that's a good width for me. I can pretty easily get into the middle without breaking my back. One of the ways that we maintain really healthy garden soil in a raised bed is never stepping inside the bed and on the soil. And so you just don't want to go so wide that you have to do that. So I would keep it to 4 feet wide, or less is okay, but I wouldn't go more. Okay, so the next consideration is what type of lumber you want to use for your beds. And the first decision is whether you want to use something like pressure-treated lumber or untreated lumber. Because we garden organically, we try to stay away from pressure-treated wood in our garden, simply because we just don't want to have to worry about the possibility of chemicals leaching into the soil, out of the treated wood. We're going to eat vegetables out of the garden, and we just don't feel comfortable with that. But it really is a personal preference what you're comfortable with. If you go with untreated wood, then you have some options. Ideally, you'd want to make your beds out of a really naturally rot-resistant wood. So this would include something like cedar or redwood. And those woods you can find pretty easily. I know even the big box stores around here carry redwood and cedar, and of course lumber yards as well. And so the advantages of those woods are that they're really resistant to rot. So you could get maybe 15 years or more out of your beds, even though they're untreated. So that's a real advantage. One of the disadvantages is that they're expensive. So we'll talk in a minute about some less expensive alternatives to something like redwood or cedar. And redwood and cedar probably costs 2 times at least, maybe 3 times more than one of these less expensive woods. Having said that, it does last probably 2 or 3 times longer. So the other limitation that I've found, and the reason I'm actually using for this project one of these cheaper alternatives, is it can be hard to find redwood and cedar in a variety of different dimensions. And so, as I said, I need these 10-foot high boards, and so I haven't been able to find any place in town that carries them that deep. It's either much shorter or some taller. So I've chosen to go with a less expensive alternative wood. So there you're looking at either something like pine, or in this case it's a white fir. And it is less durable. They're not going to last as long as something like cedar or redwood. But in an arid environment like we have here in Colorado, those still last for 5-7 years even. And actually, I have a constant battle with tree roots getting into my garden beds from my neighbor's yard, and so I actually don't mind every 6 or 7 years going in and digging everything up and clearing it out, just so I can kind of stay on top of that problem. By the way, if you do have that problem of tree roots getting into your garden beds, what I found works the best is to just each season go around and just cut with a spade. Just dig your spade as deep as you can into the ground on the outside of your beds, just to cut those roots. And as long as you're far enough from the tree, it's not going to harm the tree. And you might want to do that a couple times, 3 times during a season. And that'll at least keep them at bay for a little while, although eventually they will find their way in. So what we're going to be building today is this 4 foot by 4 foot bed. I guess I forgot to mention the length. You can go whatever length you want when you build your beds. You just the only thing to keep in mind is that if you're going to go longer than 4 feet, you need to have supports along the way. So you notice these 4x4s I put in the corner for support here. So all of my beds are either these 4x4s or have a bunch of 12x4s as well. So they're 12 feet long. And for those, I space 4x4s every 4 feet. Okay, so for a 12-foot bed, you're going to have 4 of these. Otherwise, the weight of the soil is just going to always be pushing out, and you're going to get a lot of bowing in the wood. So you want to make sure you space those 4x4s every 4 feet or so. So we're going to build this bed, this 4x4 bed, and so I want to show you the materials that you need to do this, and it's really a pretty quick project. Okay, so the only materials you need for this project are, first of all, your boards, and again, these are going to be whatever length you want your bed to be. So they're 4 feet in my case. I actually bought these at a big box store, and they'll usually cut them for you if you want. So you can. So I just get a 16 feet long board and have them cut it into 4 equal lengths, and then I use that to build the bed. The other thing you're going to need is 4x4s. So these usually come like 8 feet long or 10 feet long. So I actually just cut these into smaller pieces, and so the length of these is just about an inch or 2 longer than the depth of the board, just so you can kind of use that to stabilize your bed when you put it into the ground. Now that means you just have to dig a little bit to set these into the ground. Then you just need some good wood screws. So I use at least 3.5 inches long. Works pretty well. You could even go with 4 inches. I wouldn't go too much less than that. And these are usually used to build decks, and they work really well for this project. And you need a drill, and that's basically it. So it's pretty simple. So let's dive right in. All right. So first of all, it's much easier if you can do this on a flat surface like this concrete slab. That's just going to make life a lot easier. You can do it on an uneven ground, but it's just more difficult. The first thing I like to do is just kind of frame out the bed. To do that, I'm just going to drive 1 screw into each corner. I don't have my 4x4s in place yet, but this is going to make it easier to drill into those. So I'm just going to put in 1 screw. And I'm going to do that into each corner. So I'll get back with you in a second. All right, so I want to show you how I do the last board, because this is just going to help to make sure the whole thing is square. So I just like to pull it over to the straight edge of this slab. And that way I know everything is straight. And then I'm going to drill into this one. Okay, and so there you can see what that does is now I know where I need to put this one. Otherwise you can get it a little bit so it's not quite square. So that just helps with that. So I'm going to go ahead and put this last screw in, and then I'll show you how to put in the 4x4 posts. Okay, so now we've got the basic box built, and so now we just need to get it supported a little bit better. So I'm going to put in, so we actually have the bottom side up. Okay, so this is we're going to flip this thing over when it's done. So that's why you've got that extra inch or so here on the legs. And all you need is 2 screws into each post from both sides. Okay, so there's the first screw, and I'm going to put a second screw, and I'm going to do that on this side as well. And I'm going to hit all these other corners like that, and it's really that easy, and then we're done. So as I'm getting ready to drive in these last couple posts, I also wanted to mention, you'll notice the difference in the wood between these 4x4s I'm using and the boards here. And the reason for that is actually I did spring for the extra cost on the cedar 4x4s, because what I've found over the years, and for whatever reason, it seems like the part of the bed that's most vulnerable to rot are these 4x4s, which is a little counterintuitive because they are thicker. But I always find that seems to rot first, and then that's the real structural integrity of the bed, and so it just falls apart after that. So I've been using these cedar 4x4s to try to get a little bit of extra life out of the garden bed. So just going to finish driving. Again, 2 screws. Okay, so got everything put together, so we're pretty much ready to go here. Just one quick note, I did mention that these are 4x4 posts are a little bit longer than the bed, and that's mostly because, as I said, I'm on a hillside and I just want to give it a little bit of extra support there. You could do these flush as well if you're laying on level ground. So basically, we're going to flip this over and we'll put it into the garden. You just want to make sure that the ground is as level as possible, and then you just need to fill it with soil. So you can either, well, usually unless you have a bunch of extra soil around your house, then you're probably going to need to buy some soil to put in here. It's cheapest to do that from sort of in bulk versus going and buying a bunch of bags if you have a big garden at least. One little tip, you definitely want to remove any sod and anything like that you're going to put the bed on. So dig all that up, otherwise you're just going to grow grass in your bed, which is a real pain. And the other thing is, if you're going to be sort of coming up against your native soil at the bottom of the bed, it's best to kind of mix up the lower layer of whatever soil you're putting in with your native soil, just so there's not a really abrupt change in soil structure, because plants don't really like that growing into sort of different structured soils. So just try to mix it up a little bit. All right, I hope this video was useful for you, and good luck building your beds, and let us know how it goes in the comments.